I dropped the grocery receipt on the kitchen counter and watched Mara pick it up before I even took off my shoes. Her eyes moved across the paper while I stood near the apartment door holding my work bag. The kitchen smelled like tomato soup and fresh bread, but the warmth disappeared the moment she studied the receipt too carefully. Outside, rain touched the window softly and traffic moved through the street below us. Mara looked calm, almost too calm, and my stomach tightened immediately. I am Naomi. I am 28 years old, and until recently, I thought I understood what a healthy relationship looked like. I lived with my girlfriend Mara in a small apartment near the river. She worked as a project manager for a software company, and I worked in digital marketing for a travel company downtown. Our life looked stable from the outside. We paid rent together, cooked dinner together, and spent weekends watching movies under heavy blankets on the couch. Mara liked structure. At first, I loved that about her. She planned vacations months early, organized important documents in labeled folders, and remembered every appointment without checking her phone. She made life feel stable in a way I had never experienced before. I was different. I bought books without planning. I spent too much money on coffee during stressful work days. Sometimes I ordered expensive takeout after long meetings because cooking felt impossible afterward. I still paid my bills on time and saved money every month, but I never treated life like a carefully managed project. That night, Mara held up the receipt and asked why I spent $12 at a bakery near my office. The question sounded small, but something in her voice made it feel larger. I explained that my team finished a difficult campaign, so I bought coffee and pastries for everyone before our meeting. Mara placed the receipt back on the counter carefully and then asked why I never mentioned spending money there. I laughed softly because I honestly thought she was joking. But Mara did not smile. She crossed her arms and leaned against the kitchen counter. Then she explained that financial habits revealed important truths about people. According to her, serious couples should understand how each other used money because hidden habits often cause larger problems later. I remember standing there silently, wondering how coffee and pastries became such a serious conversation. Healthy relationships need honesty about important financial decisions. Shared responsibilities matter, especially when couples build a future together. But there is also a difference between communication and constant monitoring. Sometimes control arrives through reasonable conversations before anyone notices pressure growing underneath them. I tried to keep the evening peaceful. I sat beside Mara on the couch and opened my banking app willingly. I showed her my monthly budget because I thought transparency would calm her fears. Instead, she became more interested. She leaned closer and pointed at several purchases from the previous month: a bookstore near my office, 2 food delivery orders during late work nights, a small transfer to my younger brother. I answered every question calmly because none of those things felt strange to me. My brother recently lost his job and needed grocery money. The bookstore purchase was a novel I wanted for vacation. The food deliveries happened during stressful deadlines when I barely had time to breathe. Nothing about those purchases felt secretive. Still, Mara listened with the careful attention of somebody searching for deeper meaning behind ordinary actions. That was the first night I felt emotionally drained instead of emotionally safe. Before I share the rest of story, I need to know, where are you listening from? I would love to hear from you. Over the next few weeks, small comments became normal inside our apartment. If I bought lunch outside, Mara noticed. If I ordered shampoo online instead of buying it from the supermarket, she asked why delivery mattered so much. If I bought coffee before work, she wondered whether spending money for comfort was becoming a habit. Sometimes her tone sounded curious. Other times it sounded quietly disappointed. One Saturday morning we stopped at a cafe before visiting her parents. I ordered cappuccino and chocolate cake because I skipped breakfast earlier. Mara chose plain tea and watched me while I ate. Then she smiled slightly before telling me I spent money emotionally. I laughed awkwardly and asked what that meant. Mara explained that people often use shopping, food, or small pleasures to avoid difficult feelings. According to her, disciplined people learned how to separate emotions from spending habits. Her words stayed in my head all day. That was the difficult thing about Mara. She rarely sounded cruel. She sounded intelligent and thoughtful, almost like somebody trying to help me become a better version of myself. Sometimes unhealthy behavior becomes confusing because it hides behind calm voices and logical explanations. A person begins doubting personal instincts instead of questioning the pressure they feel. Later that evening, I opened my banking app alone in the bedroom and studied my purchases carefully. Maybe Mara was right. Maybe I lacked discipline. Maybe relationships required more accountability than I understood before. But another part of me felt uncomfortable in a way I could not fully explain. I started noticing things I ignored before. Mara questioned my spending often, but she rarely discussed her own purchases. She bought expensive skincare products regularly. She subscribed to premium fitness apps and organic grocery services that cost twice as much as normal products. Whenever I mentioned those things lightly, she changed the subject quickly. One night, while we washed dishes together after dinner, I finally asked why she cared so deeply about tracking money. Mara dried her hands before answering. Then she told me something personal for the first time. When she was a teenager, her father secretly collected huge debts without telling her mother. The family lost their house 2 years later. Mara said she still remembered watching strangers carry furniture out of their living room while her mother cried quietly in the kitchen. For a moment, everything inside me softened. I finally understood where some of her fear came from. Fear changes people in silent ways. Then painful experiences can convince somebody that control creates safety, but unresolved fear can slowly damage healthy relationships when protection turns into pressure. Understanding another person's pain matters, although understanding alone cannot repair unhealthy patterns. That same night, Mara suggested something new. She wanted us to create a shared spreadsheet where we recorded every purchase above $10. At first, I thought she meant shared expenses only, but Mara already designed categories for everything: food, transportation, gifts, entertainment, work expenses, personal care. Everything had a place. I asked carefully whether she planned to record her own spending too. She smiled and said, of course. I wanted peace between us, so I agreed. For the first few days, the system almost felt harmless. We updated purchases together after dinner while music played softly in the background. Mara looked happier again. She laughed more often and kissed my forehead while we cooked together. The apartment felt warm again. Then the comments slowly returned. Mara asked why I needed another sweater when winter was nearly over. She asked why I paid for movie tickets when streaming services already existed. She wondered why branded cereal mattered when cheaper cereal sat beside it on the shelf. Each comment sounded small by itself. Together, they became exhausting. Without noticing immediately, I started changing my behavior. I stopped buying coffee during work breaks because I already imagined future questions waiting at home. I packed snacks instead of eating lunch with coworkers. When my brother needed help again, I stared at my banking app for several minutes before sending money. That moment frightened me deeply. Helping somebody I loved should not feel stressful. Support inside relationships should create safety, not fear of judgment over ordinary choices. Control often grows through repetition instead of dramatic arguments. Over time, a person stops acting naturally because they constantly prepare for criticism before it even arrives. One Friday evening, I came home earlier than usual, carrying a bookstore bag beside my work laptop. Mara sat at the dining table answering emails. She smiled warmly when I entered the apartment, but the smile faded slightly after she noticed the shopping bag. She asked what I bought. I told her I stopped at the bookstore after work. Mara closed her laptop and asked how much I spent. Something inside me shifted at that exact moment. It was not anger or sadness anymore. I simply felt exhausted. I suddenly realized I felt nervous every time I carried something new into my own home. That night, I hid the bookstore bag inside my closet before Mara entered the bedroom. My hands moved quickly while I pushed the novels beneath an old winter coat. The action felt embarrassing and childish, but I still did it. Then I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, wondering why two harmless novels suddenly felt like evidence from a crime scene. That weekend, Mara acted affectionate again. She played music while making breakfast and talked excitedly about possible vacation plans for summer. If somebody visited our apartment, they would probably think we looked happy together. Sometimes unhealthy relationships appear peaceful because tension hides inside private moments nobody else can see. On Sunday afternoon, Mara asked if I wanted to review our monthly spending report together. The phrase alone made my chest feel heavy. Still, I followed her into the living room where colorful charts already covered her laptop screen. According to Mara, entertainment spending increased by 8%. Restaurant costs improved slightly. Transportation expenses remained stable. Mara explained everything while pointing at graphs with professional excitement. Then she opened a section labeled Unnecessary Purchases. My stomach tightened immediately. Under the category, she listed several things I bought during the month: coffee with coworkers, the bookstore visit, a birthday gift for my brother, like new headphones for online meetings. I asked quietly why those purchases were considered unnecessary. Mara looked surprised by my reaction. According to her, unnecessary did not mean irresponsible. The category simply represented emotional spending instead of practical spending. Then she smiled gently and said she wanted us to become financially stronger together. I nodded slowly, but internally something already felt broken. The next week became harder than before. One afternoon at work, my friend Celia invited me to lunch with several coworkers after an exhausting meeting. My first instinct was refusing automatically because I already imagined explaining the restaurant charge later. Celia noticed my hesitation immediately. During lunch, everyone laughed and discussed office gossip while I stayed unusually quiet. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed twice beside my plate. Both messages came from Mara. She asked why I used my card at a restaurant during work hours. I stared at the screen without answering. Celia watched my expression carefully before asking whether everything was okay at home. At first, I almost lied. Then the truth escaped before I could stop it. I explained the spreadsheet, the spending questions, and the constant comments about money. Celia listened silently for several seconds. Then she asked one simple question that stayed inside my head afterward. She asked whether I still felt relaxed inside my own home. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. That silence told me everything I needed to know. When I returned home later that evening, Mara greeted me with a quick kiss and asked about my day normally. For a brief moment, and I wondered whether I exaggerated the entire situation in my mind. Then she mentioned the restaurant charge. She asked why lunch cost more than usual. I placed my bag on the kitchen chair and explained that coworkers invited me out after a difficult meeting. Mara opened the refrigerator while speaking calmly. She said occasional social lunches were understandable, but habits like that often became financially dangerous over time. Then she added that emotional discipline usually reflected personal maturity. Something inside me cracked unexpectedly. It did not happen loudly. The feeling spread slowly, like glass breaking underwater. I asked why every conversation about money felt like a performance review. Mara froze beside the refrigerator door. She turned toward me and looked genuinely hurt by the question. Then she asked why I suddenly sounded defensive when she only wanted stability for our future. I rubbed my forehead because exhaustion sat behind my eyes constantly now. I told her I missed ordinary conversations that did not involve charts, categories, or analysis. Mara crossed her arms tightly. Then she said something that stayed inside my head for days afterward. According to her, I disliked accountability because I refused to confront my unhealthy habits honestly. The apartment became painfully quiet. That night, we slept facing opposite sides of the bed. Over the following days, distance filled every room inside the apartment. Mara still spoke politely, but warmth disappeared from her voice. I caught myself calculating grocery totals on my phone before reaching the cash register because I feared future conversations waiting at home. One evening after work, I stopped at a pharmacy and bought expensive shampoo recommended by my hairdresser. When I arrived home, Mara noticed the bag immediately. She asked how much it cost. I told her. Mara laughed softly in disbelief and asked why shampoo needed to be so expensive. Normally, I would explain myself automatically. This time, I simply answered that I bought it because I wanted it. Her expression changed instantly. She asked whether I planned to ignore our financial goals now. I reminded her that I paid my bills, saved money regularly, and never asked for financial support. Then, Mara opened the spreadsheet again. I watched her typing notes into the document while standing silently in the kitchen doorway. And suddenly I saw the situation clearly. The woman I loved was recording my shampoo purchase like a manager documenting employee behavior. A sharp wave of sadness hit me so unexpectedly that my eyes filled with tears immediately. I turned away before Mara noticed. Inside the bathroom, I locked the door and pressed both hands against the sink while trying to breathe normally again. My chest felt painfully tight. I stared at my reflection and barely recognized myself anymore. I used to buy books without guilt. I used to help my family without hesitation. I used to enjoy small pleasures without preparing explanations first. Somewhere during the past months, I stopped feeling like an equal partner and started feeling like somebody requesting permission to exist comfortably. That realization hurt more than every argument before it. Late that night, while Mara slept beside me, I sat alone in the living room researching financial control inside relationships. At first, I felt dramatic doing it. Then, article after article described situations painfully similar to mine. I realized nobody starts controlling another person overnight. It usually begins with concern, questions, and small compromises. By the time fear replaces comfort, the relationship already feels completely different. I leaned back against the couch and closed my eyes. For months, I kept asking whether Mara's behavior was reasonable. For the first time, I asked something different. Why was I working so hard to prove I deserved basic trust? The next morning, Mara wrapped her arms around my waist while I made coffee in the kitchen. For one brief second, the affection felt familiar again. Then she softly asked whether I updated yesterday's purchases in the spreadsheet. I closed my eyes slowly, and in that moment, I finally understood something painful. Love should never feel like surveillance pretending to be care. Later that night, I opened one of the hidden novels and sat beside the window with a cup of coffee. Rain touched the glass softly outside. For the first time in months, I turned a page without feeling guilty. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments and tell us what trust means to you in a relationship. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional English stories that help you improve your listening and vocabulary naturally.